In today's video, we're going to talk about the Iskandar property supply situation, and to help you to understand how does this property supply figure works in Malaysia. If you have been reading in the Singapore media recently, you will have noticed that there's been a lot of talk that there is an incoming supply of real estate in Iskandar Malaysia that is as high as 336,000 units. And this supply figure is equivalent to the entire existing private housing supply in Singapore. So with these statements in the media, a lot of people have the impression that Johor property market today is in an oversupply. Okay, and this creates a lot of concern for investors as well as property buyers alike. Now, I think before we come to that conclusion that Iskandar is in an oversupply, there are a few considerations that you should take into account. Number one is that the figures given, the 336,000 incoming supply, is for the entire state of Johor. Iskandar Malaysia is only a subset of Johor state, and if you try and do an approximation, basically only 2/3 of that figure is actually in Iskandar Malaysia. So number one, the numbers are not as high as you think, because that is meant for the entire Johor state, which is a very big place. Number two, if you look at the 336,000 figure, you have to understand there are two components in it. Number one is what we call the incoming supply. Incoming supply is basically property projects that have been approved by the local authorities. Typically, they have a 2-year time frame for them to start construction, and these projects are basically just approvals given, and not necessarily any construction has started on the ground. Okay, so not all of these properties are actually under construction today in the incoming figure. The second component of the 336,000 is basically what we call a planned supply. Planned supply basically means that they have been submitted for approval by the authorities, and they have no approvals yet. Okay, basically they're still under consideration, and they have no time frames for construction at all. So they are actually not a confirmed supply figure. The other thing that you should understand is that the way construction happens in Malaysia and Singapore is very different. In Singapore, most of the land that you see is basically from the government land sales, right? And developers in Singapore, if you do not build the property within a certain time frame, you are subject to additional buyer stamp duties and what we call qualifying certificate penalties for foreign developers. In Malaysia, the system is very different. Land as a component of a project is very cheap compared to Singapore. And so developers can afford to hold on to the land much longer if there are not enough buyers. Okay? And the other situation that you may see is what we call joint ventures between a developer and a landowner. In this case, basically a landowner will inject a land into the project, and in this case, the land will be very cheap or at zero cost. Right? So what happens in the Malaysian system is that once a project has approval, the developer has a choice to build or not to build. Whether they build depends on whether they have sufficient buyers, right? If you have enough buyers buying into the project, the developer has the confidence to go ahead and build. If there are not enough buyers, then what happens is the developer may choose to hold until a better time, and basically in this case, they will refund the booking fees to the buyers. So when you look at incoming supply figures in Malaysia, you have to understand that incoming supply basically only refers to approved numbers. Okay? Developers may not necessarily have started construction. So construction in Malaysia is done based on the strength of demand, whether there are enough buyers or not, and not based on when there are approvals. This is very unlike Singapore.